Hello. I got asked, in light of my use of religious texts as historical sources, somebody asked me what my religious views were, and I said I would do a video about it. So basically, I don't have any at all. I've realized that the universe is just much bigger. like, I don't have a physics brain, but sometimes I watch some of the stuff about particle physics and I just sit there and I watch the lectures and it's quite reassuring, the tone, but I can't even follow it. And I've just realized that the universe is utterly beyond my comprehension. And that I'm a tiny little insignificant speck of dust who's embracing her littleness on a rock in, do you know what I mean, in I don't know what. So I don't think it's likely that, do you know what I mean, I don't think it's likely that a man that there's a consciousness in it. I think this system is just too big and too immensely complicated for us even to get our tiny little limited brains around, and I don't even try. I've come up with +1. Like, you can mathematically prove God by saying +1, which is that basically we can only go as far as the numbers we can make up, but we know that that's, you know what I mean, just because you can't kind of count beyond that number, it doesn't mean that infinity exists, and I don't contemplate it. That's as far as I get. The reason I use religious texts is absolutely nothing to do with religious anything. Like, my interest is in periods of instability, welfare systems consolidate. That's it. Like, our systems develop through crisis. And unfortunately, the reverse aspect of studying welfare systems is studying wars. Now, economics is the 20th century belief system that we've got to shape our systems, and it's just kind of died and we're all kind of figuring it out. But we generally go through periods of learning during crisis that expand our economic understanding in one way or the other. And because the search for the sacred has kind of driven our institutional development, the earliest systems are built around, like, they evolve around the temples, and it just so happens that the Abrahamic faith texts give me a line that I can follow across multiple civilizations. And because they're a primary source, as well as being like the foundation text for our civilization, whatever your identity, whatever your religious beliefs, this was this is the civilizations at the roots of ours, and these are primary sources. Like, I find that with a bit of study and a bit of understanding, that these texts are phenomenal historical literary sources. They can give you insight into power structures that are, it's actually direct insight into what's going on here. You can find in the Torah and in the Quran and in the Bible, you can find an accurate reflection of what law was covering. You know, in the books of Leviticus, it'll tell you what they needed laws to cover. This tells you a great deal about these societies. I think these texts are chronically undervalued as historical resources because we don't know how to read them. When you read Hebrew thinkers, you realize these texts are not written to be taken literally. They are the core of governance systems. They are symbolic stories that have to do a lot of work. Like, the writing's phenomenal. I couldn't write like this. But to take them literally is to miss that and to lose the opportunity. So if you put them in context, but you're actually treating them as historical sources, which I do, and partial historical sources at that, you know, that's not the same as believing that God is a voice who, you know, appears in burning bushes and trumpets go out of the sky. And, you know, these stories were not intended to be taken literally. This is a modern interpretation. Now, the systems that emerged at the center of these texts, I'm fascinated by. These are like bringing together of political cooperation and the rule of law and safeguarding systems in an incredibly sophisticated way. I'm going to redo the analysis I did of the wedding at Cana in the New Testament, which is one of the most phenomenally sophisticated pieces of writing expressing a governance system at its core and some quite serious information. But because we as modern readers take them literally, which is largely, I think, the result of a conscious choice in about the 1st century, you know, I've never believed in the God of the Bible in that way. I don't have a belief in the supernatural. I think the word for psyche in Greek, the word for soul in Greek is psyche. And I think in the modern world we use, you know, a bunch of other belief systems in the same way to express the same things that we used to use these religious texts for. So I do use them. I have found them an invaluable source in providing a structured understanding to the development of a whole bunch of civilizations. I'm absolutely not a minute of the time that, like, I've learned a little bit of Hebrew, a little bit of Greek, and I'm planning on learning a bit of Arabic. I don't need to learn enough of these languages to converse, and I'm not interested in the modern language and being able to do that just yet. But being able to read these texts and to look at some of the words and the way that they're constructed, I've just found like it's phenomenally useful. I'm always a bit worried about the use of biblical analysis, because I'm a bit worried that I don't want to cross over into, well, I do have an understanding of Islamic theology and Hebrew theology and Christian theology. My decision making and my analysis like instinctively removes adult identity from every question. I'm interested in the rule of law and governance systems, and that's not really the same. So my interest in these texts is not about a search for the spiritual. I find that sitting on my step and looking at the sky and the trees, do you know what I mean? Or sometimes I don't. I don't have I'm not like, I don't have a religion at all. And I don't really believe in that sort of, I find the notion, I like the Islamic concept of Tawheed, oneness of being, like understanding the world that you're in. To me, these religious texts exist in a world before we have modern scientific method and mathematics, and you know, I think it's tremendously important to understand these texts, and I approach them with a massive amount of respect. And I certainly respect people's belief systems, but I don't really believe in God. I don't believe in ancient aliens. I don't believe that gods have ever, like, I don't believe that God is a consciousness that could intervene. That would actually be, to me, a fundamental bad idea. That would be like, do you know what I mean? I don't think I'm not interested in that notion. To me, that was a psychological device employed in the text because they didn't have governance systems. So the job of these texts was to put the fear of God where the powerful wanted it sometimes, you know. I'm interested in the construction of these texts. I think the Quran in particular is an extraordinary, like, it's an extraordinary text. I'm amazed by the work that's done with these parables and the amount of information that they can squeeze into a very small space, as long as you understand how they're constructed. But I don't take any of it literally. I don't have a spiritual or woo. I'm not a superstition kind of outside counting magpies. I don't believe in that sort of a God. The Lord in these religious texts is about governance systems, and these texts are written so that you can assess those governance systems periodically. I find them useful. I do use them. I'm glad that I've kind of discovered that I can use them to get that insight into history. But I'm really not religious at all. Nothing beyond +1 really. I just think I'm a tiny meat skeleton with a limited perception in an infinite universe, and I kind of concentrate on the material world and how people treat each other, and not psychological devices that are designed to put fear in people, and you know, haven't really done women that much good at all, if I'm honest. So yeah, I don't really have religious views. I really value these texts as historical sources. That's it. Sorry.